education, they're paying very little, and in the old program, when the state and the federal government were paying, it was even worse, because people would say, I can't afford to send my kids to college that way. These prisoners are getting it for free. I think my response has always been, these men and women will come back to the community. How do you want them to come back? If they can support themselves, the criminal activity that they were doing won't happen again.
Before I turn the discussion part of this evening over to Annie Tyson, I just want to say 2 or 3 things. One is, this is the second time that I've seen this film. I think I'm more moved the second time even than the first. John Lovejoy Elliott, the ethical culture leader, said, we have the right to assume that in every common man there is an uncommon good. Act on that and see what happens. I think that's what a program like this demonstrates. I myself am, not sure what the word is, humble, glad to have crossed paths with 2 very special prison superintendents. Elaine Relay, who started the Children's Center at Bedford Hills Correctional, and Brian Fisher, who was superintendent at Sing Sing. A number of people have arrived, including one of the stars, John Conyers, who's here. And you might have caught a glimpse of Marion Farrell at the graduation. Control the conversation.
Control, no, but facilitate, yes. Thank you so much. This was it was my first time seeing it. I look forward to seeing it again and again. And it was very inspirational. And I was watching reactions among the folks gathered here, and it was just a one. I don't have words. We'll come up with words later. Meanwhile, you have words. Sean and Commissioner Fisher, if you could have a conversation with us about the correctional facility and criminal justice as you see it today. I'm sorry?
Feedback is off.
Yeah, feedback is off.
The value of education. It just goes without saying. You saw the results, you see the results here. But from my position, let me offer a couple of questions that really kind of fit to, I think, the topic that you'll be spending time tomorrow. Ethics and morals, morality, if you would. We all know that education is important, but, and this is what's always thrown at people like myself, is it society's obligation to spend money and energy educating people who have committed serious crimes? Morally, I suspect, but do we really, is that society's role? Is that your role? Add to that questions that I've always faced, and I've kind of made peace with it, but do we choose, if we're going to do education, which we do, should there be criteria? Do we give, and you saw that, do we give an education to someone who's doing life without parole? Do we give education to someone doing 25 to life, or do we spend our resources, unfortunately our scarce resources sometimes, on someone going home? Is there a moral obligation to ignore the sentence, the crime, the length of sentence, and simply provide the education for everybody, anybody who wants it? These are questions that unfortunately I'm forced to deal with. And I'm offering it to you because ultimately you've got to decide. Do we have an obligation? Should we limit who gets an education? And if we do one way or the other, how do you feel about it? From my point of view, clearly, I can be very selfish about it. Providing education inside a prison does 2 things. One for the offender, the inmate, and one for management. If I'm very, very concerned about myself, I know that people in school, in education, do not create problems. So from my point of view, the more people we have in education, the less people I have out in the yard cutting each other. The same thing is true, I see some people from other rehabilitation to the arts is here. Osborne is here. The more people getting involved in those programs, the less problems I have inside the prison. So from my point of view, I honestly, put morals aside, ethics aside, and I talk about management. What's good for management? But that's not really a good answer. The answer is, should we be doing education? Obviously, I do believe in it. But what scares me, and I hope you understand this, that what you saw in this movie is 200 men have gone through Hudson Link. Last year, we had 1,200 men and women in a college program somewhere along the line in the correctional system. 1,200 sounds good, but there are 56,000 offenders locked up in prison. So we have a long way to go if, in fact, we believe in it. And then the question, I guess, for you is, if you do believe in it, and I'm sure you probably do, why is the federal government and the state government refusing to pay for the education? So those are kind of questions that I live with, I think you live with, and that's really what I want to kind of lay out. How do you feel about the system? You heard, I'm embarrassed a little bit, but you have to understand the complexity of the prison system. We removed 30 people because a cell phone was found in the wrong place. That sounds cruel and hard, but there's only several things that will always frighten people like me. Obviously, a riot, escape, cell phones are part of those things, and the third and the biggest one obviously is a fire. Those three things keep me awake at night, that fear. And when people are afraid, what do? We overreact. We lock people up in prison partly because we're afraid, partly because we want to punish people. At some point, and this is where it goes back to a whole other issue, I guess a question of ethics and morals and convictions about what we want to do as a society. There's a question that always comes up from the offender population when you go to prison. When is enough enough? How long does a person have to stay in prison before we, society, can say, okay, enough, go home, be with your family, get a job, do something right? We've not been able to resolve that problem, I don't believe, in the country. And maybe we'll get there someday. But these are the questions that I think you have to consider. Why do we do what we do? And are we in fact doing the right thing? And I'm here to answer any questions you might have, but I think Sean can tell you, we struggle with these things every day. I have to give credit to Sean and everybody else who's gone through the system, who go out and basically hustle for donations and cooperation from outside sources, because that's what makes the program run. But that's not necessarily what it should be. I think we would all agree, if in an ideal society, everybody should get an education, whether it's in the school or in prison. So the most basic question is, why don't we provide the education? Open for questions.
I did want to just give one disclaimer, because he's pretty rough on himself as the tough guy. I went through 9 different maximum security prisons over 16 years before I finally was released. And in the first 8, I was warned, don't even write the superintendent if you have a problem. Like, make believe they're not in the facility. And then I got to Sing Sing and met the commissioner, who was then the superintendent. And when I tell you that he's a big softie, he would stick his head in the school building. You guys know from RTA and from Osborne, we count each day a blessing with him at the helm, because it hasn't always been that way. And he would stick his head in the school building, hey, what's going on? What do you guys need? How's it running? Are there any issues? And that's not the norm. So I literally thank every day that he's at the helm, and I know we're with 44 years on the job. 44 years on the job, I guess it's not going to be much longer that we're going to lose him, but while he's there, we're going to keep doing what we do.
First of all, I would like to thank Brian Fisher because I think he's a mixture of compassion and practicality. There's something to say about a man who could walk through a prison yard without any security with him. You know, there's something to say about a man who is willing to give another person an education. When I first met Mr. Fisher, fortunately, I didn't see a superintendent. I saw a commissioner. I saw someone much greater than a superintendent. I saw a man. And when I see him out here, people always criticize me for saying this, but I see a governor. I see somebody. I really do, and I'd like to thank you because I'm proud to have recently received the Brian Fisher Award. I couldn't be more proud of you.
I wanted to ask if there were any questions.
Introduce Theo.
Theo.
I wasn't prepared to actually stand up here today. If I were, I would have been dressed like these guys. I look like I just got off a cruise ship somewhere. But it feels good to look like that, finally. I was in Sing Sing, went through the master's program, graduate from NYTS. Johnny Connors and I were in the program, well, not together, but we were in Sing Sing together. And right now, I'm working as the Prison Partnership Associate for the Hudson River Presbytery. And my job is to go around to 88 Presbyterian churches in our district and try to sell them on prison ministry. And I must say that it is a hard sell. Prison is really a hard sell. And I guess we all understand why. It's because of the stereotypes. People don't see what we just saw today. And they need to know that there are people in there who actually are human beings who need a human touch and who need a chance to get it right. And I think that that's what we're here about tonight. I think that there's going to be some good discussion tomorrow, and I'm really looking forward to being a part of it. Thank you very much.
I just want to say, first of all, I think everybody in this room is overwhelmed by the work that you are doing, and I just hope it moves from state to state to state. So I have two questions. One is, are you seeing other states looking at this as models, and is it working anywhere else? And secondly, when and where can we buy this film? Thank you.
It's really not moving in other states. Other states have some college programs, and I'm glad you put it that way, because Hudson Lee created a model, and a model that I really believe in. And years ago, when federal government gave out money for college programs, a lot of people took a lot of college courses. They never got a degree. Using a Hudson Link model, I don't allow a program to enter a prison unless they're prepared to give them a program and a diploma, not a certificate, a diploma. If you're not going to come in and do the whole thing, don't come in. Because the worst thing we can do is raise expectations and not deliver it. So the answer, unfortunately, is most other systems do not. And I'm sure we could probably start selling you those discs if you want.
We are in negotiations right now with a national distributor, which we will announce the sale probably next month. So we're very excited.
I'm wondering what life is like for the men after this fantastic experience and emotional graduation, but then they still have time left to do. And I just wonder what follows and what they can do while they're still in.
I didn't like the part of the movie. I didn't have anything to do with the edit. I wish I could claim the editing process, but when I saw it for the first time, when Chris Payton, the valedictorian's father, says at the end, "I don't smile," but then he goes on to say, "Now they should let him go." There's no correlation between getting a degree and getting released, which I'm actually glad, because then you'd have people, quite honestly, saying, sure, get a degree, go home. That's all they're doing it for. Most of the men in that program are not coming home right away, as you saw the dates on the end. And that makes us stronger. Way back when, 13 years ago, when the question came up, when we started to pick up steam about how this would look, it took about 2 years to figure out how to make this work. Brian was in that room, and when the question came up of who's going to sit in that first group, and the immediate answer was, well, the guy's getting ready to go home, should be the first in. And the commissioner said, I would recommend that we put the most qualified in first, not the guys ready to go home. Thank God he thought that way, and thank God we listened, because if that first group would have graduated and gone right home, the program would have died. That first group went through of 16 men, and actually Johnny and I were in that first graduating class in '01. A few of the guys went home immediately, and then a few guys each year, but the guys that didn't go home, like myself, ran it for the next 18 months. And then I trained the guy that was going to run it next, and then he trained the guy who was going to run it. So it's continually run in all 4 facilities by the men and women that go through it. And actually, the academic coordinators, in each facility we have an academic coordinator that runs the program. 2 of the women actually went through the program, are now home and now running the program in the facilities, which speaks volumes to the men and women that are still in the program, that this is the real deal.
And one of the reasons why it does work at other facilities, little by little. We saw in the movie, could we do it at Attica and Auburn? We are beginning to do that. And one of the reasons is for the men who get a college education, but don't leave. They become the leaders, the positive leaders in the prison system. And they're the ones who encourage other people to get involved in college. So from a warden's point of view, a superintendent's point of view, we encourage that because we then use them, to be honest, we use them to help run the prison in a positive way. So there's a benefit both for the offender and for the management.
Yeah, I am very, very moved by the film, and I'm wondering, what are the policies that you need changed so that this terrible disparity between the small number who graduated and the large number incarcerated is reduced? I remember teaching in Harlem 20 years ago, maybe, and the Pell Grants made a big difference. I mean, single moms could go to school and raise kids and go to work. And then something changed in the state or federal policy, and you could only go to school full-time. It was all or nothing, and then single parents were out, at least the ones I worked with. So what are the governmental policies that would be allies would focus on with you to move towards a major shift governmentally?
There's an organization called Education from the Inside Out, consisting of College Community Fellowship, the Ford Society, and Hudson Link, that is working towards reinstating the Pell and TAP grants. It's been a long struggle. We're about 2 years old already. We've been going to DC and advocating and getting senators and assembly folks and the commissioner to sign on as supporters. I still have lumps in the back of my head when I leave the senators and congressman's office. It hasn't gone well so far, but it's going to be a long struggle. We know that. And fighting for anything in a correctional facility, especially in tough economic times, is not easy.
I just want to change the focus just a little bit. I mean, obviously what you're doing is great, but somebody, your question about the senators and everything, my question for Brian is, what difference would it make in the prisons if drugs were decriminalized?
Honest answer?
Yeah.
Very little. Because if you're going to legalize it in the street, that's fine. I can't legalize it in the prison. And it's not the drugs. It's not the drugs themselves. It's what swirls around drugs. The sale of it. People owe people money. Contraband. The fear we have isn't that someone is smoking marijuana. It's how it got there and how did he pay for it. And all the fights we have very often is just like in the street. You have dealers, you have mules, you have everybody else. I'm not convinced, that's me speaking, I'm not convinced that if you legalize it in the street, we could legalize it in the prison. And I'll put another question to you.
Oh, no, my question wasn't about prison. No, I just meant in general, if drugs were legalized, you know, if people were, drugs were decriminalized.
I thought you were asking in the prison, sorry.
Yeah, I don't care, no, I'm not saying what would happen in prison, I'm saying, since a third of the people in prisons are there for drug-related offenses.
Let's change. 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I took over, 60% of our population was in for drugs. It was the end of the Rockefeller drug laws. Today, less than 30% of the people in prison are in for drugs. So we have, in fact, made tremendous strides, I think, in being more realistic about the use and sale and possession and making it less criminal. Even, well, the governor now wants to lower the amount. If it's in your pocket, ignore it, that kind of thing. Yes, I think your answer is it should reduce the number of people coming to prison simply for drug-related issues. It may not necessarily change other situations.
Comment here.
Oh, yes. Excuse me for my appearance. I just got off work not too long ago. You said economic times, and my question as being an ex-CO, started in Sing Sing, 4.5 years, and now I'm a police officer. I'm a police officer. My question to you is, one of the biggest arguments is basically the times and the money. Why would people want to contribute to education with Hudson Links and these students out here are hustling and bustling for every dime who haven't broken the law?
Yeah.
So that's your competition. And who's your networks? This gentleman said he's a hard sell for the churches.
Yeah.
So who are you guys partnership with, and who's your network? How are you getting this out there? Because it's very powerful.
Thank you, thank you. Well, right now, Moxie Films, that created the film, is in charge of promotion and the negotiation of the sale. So this is literally the only copy we have we're allowed to show as long as we don't sell tickets. So if anyone bought a ticket tonight, Bob was not supposed to sell tickets.
I'll give it back. I'll give it back.
But give my money back. The idea that there was a bit of a misconception when the Pell and TAP grants were taken away, that that one kid was not going to get a Pell grant because we got them on the inside. But the Pell grants are a zero-sum game. And what that means is that if you're eligible, then you get it no matter what it is. And the idea that, well, we had to stop the inmates from getting it so that our kids could was not correct. And in fact, 1/10 of 1% of the Pell grants actually went to incarcerated men and women.
Let me answer a different way too. We send people to prison.
You're speaking like
I'll speak louder. We, society, send people to prison for committing a crime. And it's fair. You commit a crime, you have to pay a penalty. Once you're in prison, what is it you want me to do? You want me to send them back out better than when they came in. It's not magic. I can't do it by magic. So what is the most basic thing we can do to send them back out better than they came in?
Education.
Thank you. That's why we should pay for it.
You mentioned that these are correctional facilities. I wonder about that term. I know you have to use it because that's what everybody else uses. But they aren't facilities, and they don't correct. And I wonder if you're, in your way, maybe you could find another term and not foster this unreal thing.
When ADIP occurred in 1971, they were guards and prisons. Then it became correction officers and institutions. Then it became facilities. I was yelled at a while ago for using the word inmate. And you hear that I often use the word offender. Nobody likes that one either. I can't win. And I agree. What we would like to call ourselves, and no one really knows what rehabilitation is, but it'd be nice to say we are the New York State Rehabilitation Centers. But society, most people wouldn't like that either. We're in a no-win situation sometimes, but if you got a good idea for a name, let me know.
Why not call them prisons?
You know, I go back so long that I remember calling them convicts.
Yeah.
And then we call them patients. Then we call them everything. Let me put it this way. I'm not sure the name matters anymore. It's what we do with them that matters.
I will say this, just speaking from my perspective. When I got into trouble as a 16-year-old, first of all, I didn't realize at 16 I was going to go to prison for doing something wrong. I might have been thinking a little differently, but I ended up in a place I didn't know existed. And at 16, I went to a maximum security prison. The last grade that I had completed was the 9th grade. And I really thought my life was over. And what changed that for me, when I was sitting in that cell, I was in the Elmira Boys Reformatory, which, if anyone knows the area, it's a maximum security prison for men. And I had a 24-year sentence, and I thought my life was over. At 16, I couldn't see that far. It physically and mentally wasn't possible for me to think about how a 24-year sentence would do and what I could survive. And while I was feeling very sorry for myself and really feeling like my life had come to an end as I knew it, one of the officers came to my cell and he said, you know, if you don't mind, I need some help. I couldn't for the life of me think about how I could possibly help this officer. And he said to me, what are you talking about? You're the most educated guy around. He took me to the basement, and there was a huge pile of donated children's books and a bunch of men that couldn't wait for me to start reading. Now, I very selfishly jumped in because at that time, during the orientation process, you're in your cell 23 hours a day until they figure out where you should go. I did it just to get out of my cell. And while I was there and reading to these men, not realizing what I was actually giving or getting, because when you volunteer in any capacity, it changes your life. I left that facility after about 8 months. And like I said, I went to 9 different facilities over the next 16 years. And every time I got moved, I started all over again. And just for your perspective, I was 2 inches shorter, I weighed 120 pounds, and I wasn't shaving yet. You know what I'm saying? So every time I got in a little over my head, and it happened more than I'd like to admit, one of those guys I read to was there. That's what it's all about. I was changed. You don't want to call it a correctional facility? I came home corrected. Because when I walked out of Sing Sing, after 16 years, I had more time in prison than out of prison. I was a very different person. I was mature, educated, and ready to make some responsible decisions.
sector jobs, where do they go?
Almost every single one of the men is in the social services field. Social workers, caseworkers, service providers, and actually what Johnny does and Theo are both working in reentry in some capacity.
How do we get the private economy to buy into this?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because Johnny Conyers, I should let him speak about it, but I just want to just give you some idea of what that entails. The Rotarians have a mentoring program, I think it's in Port Chester. So you want to talk about, give them some what that's about?
Well, like, you know, speaking on you know, staying on the topic of education, as you know, as this slogan goes, it's a gift that keeps on giving. What's a natural progression for Hudson Link is for someone not only to continue to be positive leaders in the correctional facilities, but to come to our communities and be positive leaders. And so what comes next is that we're creating an atmosphere that would be safety for the community, and also that will be a positive element for those who are coming back into our community. So we have what we call reentry programs. I was lucky enough to have been in the first graduating class and had an organizational management degree. So it fit well into actually establishing an organization for helping those who are coming back into the community to connect with resources, helping them with their job interviewing skills, connecting them to mentoring programs, which is my Rotary Club has actually teamed with Saving Our Society to actually help those on a higher level. I guess our slogan was, those at the high level of society is helping those at the bottom level. Because mostly Rotarians are coming from some type of executive position. They have their own businesses, so we connected those. So I guess to answer the question is that we're trying to reach out to our communities to help programs such as Saving Our Society or any of the reentry programs to help continue to make our communities safe by bringing them into a place where you can accept them.
But let me give you the downside. Society downside. You come out of prison, you can't get a job because you got a record. You can't even get into college in some places. SUNY basically says no to people with a history of violence, particularly, or almost any kind of felony. Says no, you can't come to college. If your family lives in a housing project, you can't live there. Society won't let you be certain jobs because you have a record. So society punishes you again because you committed a crime 20 years ago. That's the downside, and we're back to where is our moral compass? When do we say enough is enough?
Is there a ban the Fox campaign going on?
Yes. The shoe, it was the boot the shoe, was going on for years until I think about 18 months ago where Congress passed the bill which would ban the box. So anybody with diagnosed mental health disability, if they had a disciplinary issue in prison, would not be placed in solitary confinement if they were diagnosed, because isolation with a diagnosed disability means higher rates of suicide. And we've actually had that bill passed, and simply all it states is that if you have a diagnosed disability, you will not go into solitary confinement. That's it.
I think you might mean the box on the application.
I'm sorry. When you say box to an ex-con, I'm thinking solitary confinement, all right?
Take a look at Correction Law 23A. The law was passed. Like so many other laws, they're ignored. It's like so many other laws, it's how do you enforce it? It's discrimination on a subtle level.
You have two factors that you have to somehow sift out to figure out the effectiveness of this program. One is that these men made it to the top of the waiting list and got into the program, and they seem to have been, some of the sort of cream of the crop just to start with, from the word go. And then also there's the effect of the program, you know, going through it, graduating, having the education. Is there any information about have there been any of these men who almost got into the program or got into programs which were then dismantled or things like that, so that we have any sense of what happens to people who were sort of that caliber but didn't get this education?
I think college isn't for everybody. I mean, that's a fact. There are so many other programs that are as rich or as important as education. And I mean, we have theater, rehabilitation through the arts, we have Osborne, we have Fortune, we have all these other programs that are operating. I mean, the music band group. I mean, there are so many other things that are as important as education. It's whatever this person, man or woman, connects with that gives them the vehicle to do the change that they needed to do. So for me, it was education. For many guys, got into the program and said, this isn't for me, went on to vocational trades or theater arts or whatever it was, and have grasped onto something that has given their life meaning, and that gives them the chance to change. So I would say it's very difficult to measure the success of any of these programs. I just concentrate on the ones that are in it, because like the commissioner said, there's 56 or 57,000 men and women in New York. We only have 259 of them. You know, it's not even an iceberg, let alone a tip.
Maybe this is a little sort of awkward topic, but sort of curious about how the program works. One thing I'm sort of curious about is the instructor. Does the instructor have to have some certain kind of ability, or they have to be a certain type of instructor in order to be successful in the prison? Does it? Some instructors work it out and some don't. Do you go to school at the classes every day? Do you go all year round, or do you take the summers off? Where do you study? I mean, is it a 4-year program? Do you take math?
Sure. That's a lot. Hold on.
I get all these curious questions about how.
Let me just say.
Sign him up.
Yeah. Let me just say this. This is not some feel-good, hope it helps, volunteer, well, not discount volunteers. Volunteers work harder than everybody in this world. But when I say volunteer, people discount the program. These are all paid adjunct professors from the college. They are using the identical coursework, curriculum, textbook, tests, and teaching style as they do on the campus that they come from, with the exception of the fact that whatever they line up for a week's worth of work on campus isn't enough in the prison campus, because the men are so hungry. You have 18 students on the roster for class, and you count 19, so somebody snuck in that's not even getting credit to hear your lecture. It's a professor's dream. But there isn't somewhere to study. So when they come to class and they get the time with the teacher, when they leave there, they go to A block, which is the largest cell block in the country. And while it's the largest place, it's the noisiest. So trying to study in that environment is not conducive to learning. So the fact that we have the highest grades on campus, that we have the best, I mean, it's amazing that we have the results we do, but that's why so many of the men and women, when they come home and they go back to college, when they go to grad school, they kill it. Oh, bad. All right, take that, scratch that. Bad analogy, but you know what I'm saying. It's a 4-year degree. It's a bachelor's degree in organizational management, like Johnny and I got, or it's a bachelor's degree in behavioral science. That's it. We just don't have the money to offer multiple degrees. And like you were saying about what's the restrictions, it's financial. We could have 400 more students by Friday if we had the money. It just doesn't, it's not there.
We have time for a couple more questions, and I noticed that Tyler's been trying to say something. Tyler?
Thanks. So I was wondering, how are the other people in the prison who aren't in the program, be it guards, be it other inmates or whatever word we want to use, are they supportive? Are they jealous? Do you talk about it with them? Do they not want to hear about it? Is there so much other shit going on that it's just kind of is the classroom, when you leave the classroom, you go back to your life? How is that kind of interaction with the other people in the prison?
Well, I
experience that, for the most part, we get a measure of respect from the other inmates because if they need someone to talk to, if they need some advice or something, they know that they can come to us because we're motivated to learn, and we do study, and so they give us that measure of respect. On the other end of the spectrum, when you're talking about the correctional officers, my experience has been that they kind of resented the fact that we were getting the education in the first place. So I don't know what anybody else's experience was.
Well, every person that gets an education elevates the level, a positive level of the prison environment. Chris Payton, who did the valedictorian speech, he housed next to me for 5 years. He would not utter one word. You would only see that face that many times you see on prisoners, that not smiling face. And after we've lived together for so many years, he came in to the certificate program after being encouraged to come in by myself, which every time I see this movie, I just think back, it takes me to a place, man, where it makes me proud to continue to do the kind of work that I do, because you see results like that. So anytime you educate someone, you basically raises the level of the prison system, which is very good for the commissioner.
Nice one, Johnny.
I want to thank you very much. I have a last question for you, and this is why we're all here. We're all here because we want to learn what we can do to be more helpful and what we can take home to our community. So I'm going to go back to the question that Hugh asked in terms of, is this a model, but also ask you, how can we help? Some of us live in New York, so we have a closer connection, but many of us come from all across the country. And we want to have our takeaway for all of our members who are here to go back to their communities and to go back to their ethical culture, ethical humanist societies and say, I was really inspired by this, I've really learned a lot, we got to get to work, we have to do something, because I believe there's a consensus here in answer to your question. Yes, everyone should be educated, and yes, we are citizens of a society that should pay for this.
You just answered your question.
So how do we get there? Because we're not there, and I know there are a number of different strategies that we're going to be thinking of, and we need your help to help other people in need. So what kind of strategies would you recommend to us, given that we're not going to find that funding?
We have a 3-tiered plan to help the men and women when they return to the community. The number one is used laptops. We've been collecting used laptops because anyone that's been in the social services field knows 50% of your work is on the couch at night. So we try to collect the laptops, clean them up, and give them to the men and women when they come home. It's been very helpful. The other part is we email every morning with all the men and women, and we stay very connected. So without the laptop, it's very difficult. If you're in New York, we collect used laptops. If you're in New York, we collect business attire. Because for the men and women, if you don't have a clean shirt, all the education in the world doesn't mean shit. The third part is spread the word.
But let me ask you, if you want to sell education, there's two ways. The moral obligation and the public safety obligation. People who get educated do not commit crimes. So if you don't want to do it for a moral reason, do it for an economic reason.
There might be more white-collar crime.
But it's economics and morality.
Thank you so much.
We have a small certificate of thanks. You'll get yours later.
Thank you, sir.
I think all of us want to say thank you, not just for his presence here today, but for the good work he's done for so long. It's very special to have someone who is, remember what Charlotte the Spider said about Wilbur? a good friend and a good writer. It's wonderful to have a good man and a good commissioner. Thank you.
Is that why you were working so hard?